Hello, hi everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We'll get started in a couple minutes. We'll just let a couple folks join us. Okay, I guess we can get started. Just to want to respect everyone's time today. Welcome to utilizing SpacesEDU for competency-based reflection and goal setting. My name is Tatiana. I'm one of the SpacesEDU specialists here. Really excited to present today's webinar and how you can utilize our features for competency-based reflection and goal setting. This webinar is for you if you are a frequent user of SpacesEDU. If you are just getting started or have not created an account yet with us, I do recommend watching or getting started with SpacesEDU webinar afterwards before diving into the different features that we'll be mentioning today. A little bit about me before we start. I come from a higher education background where I spent almost close to a decade in student services at York University. Now I'm part of SpacesEDU and I help our partners, which means educators like yourselves understand how to use our platform. I help you identify features that are best fit for your teaching goals and practices as well. I wanted to kind of touch on the development of competencies in Canada's education system. According to a research conducted by Canada West Foundation in 2016, the majority of provinces and territories are moving towards a competency-based approach for teaching, learning, and assessment. However, the provinces and territories are moving at kind of a different pace and have different levels of commitment. I will say BC and Quebec are early adopters and have pretty much fully incorporated competencies into their curriculum and assessment. And now, since there's a shift from credentials to competencies, teachers have had to adapt their assessment and reporting practices as a result. So that's where our tool comes in and makes your lives easier. As you're watching this webinar, I do want you to think about this question in particular. So what do you need from the technology platforms that you are using to support competency-based learning and assessment? How are you going to digitize assessment? How would you like technology to facilitate this process for you? And most importantly, how will you communicate student growth with families? Those are some great guiding questions as you start to adapt SpacesEDU and implement it into your classrooms and any other education technology tools out there as well. There are multiple ways that our tool supports competency-based assessment, right? First and foremost, we are an assessment tool. You are able to collect year-round student evidence of learning. Your students can post their projects. They can submit journal entries, any learning artifacts, and grow their digital portfolio on SpacesEDU in a variety of learning environments that you can create. If you remember, we have those individual spaces that you can create for your students. And one way you could use it for competency-based assessment is to have an individual space for competencies in particular. So this can be student-driven, and also teacher-driven, meaning you can leverage our activities feature to engage students in self-reporting or self-reflection of competencies. Furthermore, you can document your observations of students' performance and progress towards competencies in individual spaces, or you can create an individual space that for each student that is kept hidden. So that could be a private space for yourself to document your ongoing teacher observations. And finally, you can record ongoing conversations and feedback about the students' learning from interviews, student-led conferences, discussions, etc., to inform the students' reflections and goal setting. And this can be shared with families year-round or at various checkpoints throughout the school year. You can record that ongoing feedback between the student and the teacher, between students, and between the student themselves. And that's where that self-reflection comes in. In terms of today's learning objectives, we're really focusing on how you can configure your teacher account for that competency-based assessment. So by the end of today's webinar, you will know how to create an individual space, for example, for core competencies or for competencies, wherever you're teaching from based on the curriculum. I will show you how to create open-ended activities for self-reporting on each core competency or competencies, and how you can document goal setting as well through our activities feature. We will go over how to apply curriculum tags and assign proficiencies to connect those activities submissions to curriculum learning standards. And finally, you'll see all of this in a beautiful spreadsheet style report that we call the proficiency report. And you can leverage that feature to gain class-wide visibility into your students' progress towards the standards and competencies. At the end of the webinar as well, I will be providing you with links to resources, especially our micro video tutorials that you can refer back to. It's great for micro learning and going over those assessment and reporting features. All right, so we will be highlighting these features and really honing in on how documentation of learning and assessment come into play when it comes to competency-based reflection and goal setting on SpacesEDU. So we'll be focusing on individual spaces, posts, activities, curriculum tags, proficiency scales, and proficiency report. Okay, so I'm just going to dive into my SpacesEDU account and in particular a class that I've already set up for you today. We will go right into the Spaces tab here to show you how to create an additional space. So we recommend individual spaces, usually for assessment, especially for developing student ownership of learning. As you can see here, I have multiple individual spaces set up. You can get really creative about the objectives of each individual space and really cater to your teaching practices, to the curriculum, etc. Let's take a closer look at one of these over here. So maybe what we could do is go into the feedback and learning journal space here. And what I really do recommend, and I cannot stress this enough, is to ensure that you do customize the description portion of a space. This way it sets the stage for students and they know what's expected of them and how they're going to use the space as well. So if we click on view more, we have outlined here guidelines and even attached resources that it can use when they are adding content to this individual space. From here, you can conveniently sort through all your students you can quickly, on the left-hand side here, just sort through their individual space. You can also quickly see all the curriculum tags, those curriculum connections that have been applied on the right-hand side here. So you can see at a glance what has been applied in this individual space. And that could help you even determine if there are any gaps in the curriculum that you should be tackling. If we go back here to the Spaces tab, you could create, as I mentioned, an individual space for competencies. So what we could do from here is click the plus create button, select individual spaces, and then next. And we want to create this space for all of our students. So we'll leave this as it's already been pre-selected for us. We can hit next, and then we're prompted to customize the space. So what I can do is give it a name. For example, we can call this my competencies. And then in the description, provide additional guidelines. Right, and then I can choose a color and also add any media that I see could be relevant. So what I'm attaching here is a list of the competencies that students are expected to master. And once I'm happy with the customization, I can hit save. There we go, it's been updated. And as you can see, it does say the space is hidden. So we do want to make sure that it becomes visible to students. And to do this, we can click on the review settings link right here, make it active, and perhaps even grant access to families by making it visible, and then hit save. Right, so now students can start populating content in this individual space. So what I also recommend as soon as you create an additional space is to also make a post to kind of welcome the student and explain furthermore, what this space will be used for. So from here, you can click on the plus create button, then post. This will appear. Again, you can add any media files if you wish. And I'm just going to include a title here and then a welcome message. And what I have here is a brief description of the main competencies, core competencies that the students will be focusing on. And this is based on the BC curriculum. So of course you can include the information or competencies that are for your curriculum specifically. And then we can hit next. Ensure that we are posting this in the correct space, and then hit next again. We want to post this to all students and then click post. Right, so here we go. We have our first post in the dedicated individual space for competencies, explaining why we created this space and how we intend to use it. I'm going to pause here to see if we have any questions. So you will need to use the Q&A function on Zoom to submit your questions. So go ahead and do that if you'd like me to elaborate on certain areas here. No questions so far. Okay, awesome. As part of the teacher account demonstration, I did want to highlight the activities feature. So we'll go right into the activities tab here. As we know, assessment is a shared responsibility. We want students to take ownership, of course, but as educators, we want to also guide them in the right direction. So that being said, you can leverage open-ended activities to prompt students to self-report on each competency, for example. And by open-ended, I mean you can assign activities without due dates, and then students can choose when they want to complete said activities. So as you can see here, I have 2 activities that are already active and they are open-ended. But let me show you how you can easily create an activity from your Spaces account. So you can click the plus create button on the bottom right. And what's neat here, you have an activity bank. And this gets created as you build more activities, it gets automatically saved to your activity portal. That way you can reuse, recycle previous content and don't have to reinvent the wheel. What I will do here is maybe just create my own activity. So we can click on new activity up here. Make sure we're in the right class. Select the space we want to assign this activity. So maybe we want this to be in the My Competencies individual space. So select that. It's going to all my students. I expect them to complete this. And in the title, we'll plot this in. This will be a self-reflection on communication. And then in the instructions, this is where you would put in the criteria. Here we go. And then, of course, you can also include any media files. And when it comes to important dates, these are optional fields. If you want to schedule activities, you can assign a start date. That way it only becomes available when you want the activity to be available. You could also assign a due date if you expect students to submit this by a specific date. Or if you leave it blank, it will become what we call open-ended activities. So students will have access to it year-round and they can submit at any point in time. I do want to highlight here the fact that you can already make those curriculum connections with an activity. So if you already know that this will be focusing on communication as a competency, what we can do is tag this to that core competency already. So by clicking on add tags here, it will prompt me to select from my curriculum tag sets what I've already loaded to my account, the relevant curriculum standard or competency. So I can go into the BC core competencies tag sets here, and I can select communication, for example, approve that. So now I know that this activity is linked to communication, which is a learning objective. And then I can sign this right away. And as you can see, it gets added to my list of open-ended activities. Do we have any questions about the creation of an activity before we move on to applying curriculum tags to other content across SpacesEDU? Nope. Okay. Well, let me go into the Spaces tab here, and then we'll dive into maybe the feedback and learning journal again. Just wanted to show you an example on how you can tag activities and making those curriculum connections. As you're reading through, let's say, your students' posts, like journal entries, you may realize that they've demonstrated a clear understanding of a specific competency. So what you can do is make that curriculum connection by applying a curriculum tag. And you would do this first by looking for the post in question, and then clicking on this little tag icon here. And when you hover over that, it should read Add Curriculum Tags. So you'll click on that. Then you'll look for the corresponding curriculum tag. Let's say it's on collaborating. So we will apply this. And at the same time, if we want to assign a proficiency towards, so their level of proficiency towards the success criteria, we can go ahead and assign that as well. And then hit submit. And now the post in question has been linked to the curriculum and has also been assigned a proficiency. So you can hover over the tags to see what the proficiency levels are. The default proficiency scale currently is for levels 1 to 4. And the curriculum tags feature is available to all teachers using SpacesEDU. If you're interested in taking your assessment even further, you may have to opt for SpacesEDU Pro to customize the proficiency scale for schools and districts. And this is something you can talk to our team about by contacting hello@spacesedu.com if your district is not already a partner. All right. Speaking of proficiencies, as you continue to apply those curriculum tags and proficiency levels on SpacesEDU, you'll actually be able to generate a proficiency report to view your students' overall performance. And how you would do this is from your feed. So let's go to the feed right now. And on the right-hand side, under tags and proficiencies, you'll see proficiency report. And then you would click view report to generate that proficiency report. This feature is perfect for igniting great conversations with students during reporting season or just year-round in general, as it allows you to identify progress gaps and areas for improvement. Teachers have also been using the proficiency report because students can see how they've been doing and are making informed decisions about areas they should be investing in more than others, just based on the proficiencies they've already demonstrated here. As a result, what you end up having is students who take control of their learning and apply the feedback they receive immediately. So what's great here as well is that you're able to filter by student on the top right here, especially if you're having that private conversation with the student. And then if you wanted to you could also focus on a specific curriculum tag. So just selecting whatever is applicable, and then just really diving into those specific tags. Or in this case, as you can see, this student hasn't demonstrated these tags themselves, so maybe that's something we can work towards in the term. And another thing to note up here is that you're able to also filter by average or most recent as well. And if we go from the rows down here and just hover on to the boxes. Sorry. So if we hover over this, it will let us know how many posts are linked to that specific tag and what the average proficiency is for that tag as well. Do we have any questions about the proficiency reports? No? Okay. All right. Before we wrap up, I did want to show you the space I created for goal setting. This one right here. Again, the description section has all the information the student needs to create that SMART goal, what's expected of them. There's an external link for examples as well. And then you can see the student has submitted a goal already. And what's great is you can also ask students to update you on their progress. Whether that's in the comment section, they could comment on how they're progressing in their action plan. Or what they can do is also click on the three dots here. They can copy the post and then provide an update directly within that space, just speaking on how they're doing so far and reflecting on their goals this way. And what's awesome is you can also involve families in the goal setting conversation by giving them access to the space, so you can make it visible for them. And even if you wanted to provide them with the ability to comment on the posts, which might be nice to have families engage in that aspect. They can provide constructive feedback and even any observations maybe they've noticed at home as well, and improvements that students have made towards those goals. So that wraps up the features for competencies. As you can see, our tool is very flexible in that you can decide how you want to use and apply the different features that we have available. It's definitely not one size fits all. So you have the choice to use the features however you want to, just based on your need, your classroom needs, your students, and your teaching practices as well. If you want to stay connected with us after today, we would definitely recommend joining us on Twitter or even Facebook with our educator community. It's a great place to connect with other educators who are using SpacesEDU, and you can learn from teachers across Canada, the States, different districts, to see what they're doing and sharing ideas. We also have a podcast called Competencies Without a Classroom. Highly recommend it. It's focused on growth without grades. So definitely check it out. Other than that, thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions about our features after today's webinar, feel free to email hello@spacesedu.com. I will be sending you some resources as well in a follow-up email in the coming days, where you can start exploring the different features, and as well as a specific resource for this webinar, recalling the different features we explored together. I also recommend submitting your feedback, telling us how you felt or how you found the webinar today, and maybe if you have any ideas for future topics, those are also welcome. And any feedback submission enters you into a draw to win a $25 Starbucks gift card. So definitely recommend you telling us what you thought today. Other than that, thank you so much again for joining me, and I will see you next time.